Sheikh.
Protests continue in the San Diego, California suburb of El Cajon, where police shot and killed an unarmed African-American man Tuesday after his sister called 911 to report her brother was having a mental health emergency. After Tuesday's shooting, Alfred Olongo's sister explained the encounter with the police.
I called the 911 3 times to come and help my brother, that he's mentally perturbed and he needed help. And I thought it would sound somebody to help him and get some crisis communication going on. The police officer, of course, came. He was running around, crossing the street. He almost got hit by the car. So I kind of tailgate him with my car and try to get some help so they can take him to the hospital. When the police officer came, I told them, and they finally got him. Tried to tell my brother, please put your hands up. Don't put your hands in your pocket. Listen. And I told the police, please don't shoot him. He's sick. I did not call the police officer to come and kill my brother.
That was Alfred Olongo's sister talking about what happened when her brother was shot. We're continuing our conversation now with Dan Gillian, the attorney for Olongo's family, and Christopher Rice Wilson. I'd like to ask Christopher Rice Wilson about, could you say something about your response to the shooting?
Well, I'm simply aghast at the actions taken that day by the El Cajon Police Department, and continuing with the police chief's press conference that, revealed a still photo that made their case and presented Olongo as a threat. The community is really upset right now, and we want justice for Alfred Olongo. We want a transparent investigation. We don't believe that we can get that here in San Diego. And we're asking Attorney General Loretta Lynch to assign an investigator from the Department of Justice. The community is really upset right now. We are standing with the family, demanding justice, and hoping and praying that someone will come help us here in San Diego.
Can you talk about the history of police relations in San Diego?
Well, I think police relations with communities of color across this country are not very good right now. We see this happening across the country, so we don't have to isolate it to San Diego. But when you talk about the El Cajon Police Department and its history with the community, there was a grand jury report about a year ago that recommended improvements in the El Cajon Police Department's handling of the homeless and mentally ill, which have largely gone ignored. There's not a significant black population in El Cajon, and the black folks who do live in El Cajon often feel picked on by the police department, harassed by the police department. And so when we see what happened the other day to Mr. Olongo, it did not come as a surprise to many people who said it was just a matter of time prior to this event.
Dan Gillian, you not only represent the Alfred Olongo family after the police shooting death of Alfred Olongo, you represent a plaintiff who sued Officer Gonzalez now twice. And, in civilian life, we see this. We see, for example, in Omar Mateen in the Pulse shooting, the man who opened fire in the nightclub in Florida, the violence against women that precedes it, that perhaps is not taken seriously. Can you explain the story of your other plaintiff, the woman officer who says Gonzalez has been harassing her now for how long, and what has he been doing to her?
Well, I represent Officer Christina Greer, and she's a current police officer at the El Cajon Police Department. Now, I'm a civil rights attorney, and civil rights includes sexual harassment. And I represent a lot of police officers themselves. And I began suing police officers on civil rights cases, and then a number of years ago, they began hiring me to go after the police departments themselves when their civil rights have been violated. And this is one of those cases where Ms. Greer, Officer Greer, was facing some very severe sexual harassment by her own immediate supervisor, her sergeant. And that was Richard Gonzalez, the same officer now. He was demoted to an officer that shot Mr. Olongo. He sent her a graphic, lewd photograph of his penis. And it was accompanied by text messages asking her for sexual acts with her wife. She's lesbian. It was over-the-top sexual harassment, something that would get anybody in this world, I would suspect, fired. But for whatever reason, the El Cajon Police Department decided to rally around, circle the wagons around then Sergeant Richard Gonzalez, and just demote him down, and then send him back to work with her. At which point he began continuing his harassment of her, spitting on her locker, following her down the hallway. Other officers would start making comments about her complaint about him because they didn't like that she violated the code of silence. It's just a deplorable situation for Officer Greer. And now this cowboy, who felt like he didn't have to follow the rules that said you can't send photographs of your penis to your subordinates, the same officer showed up at the scene of a mentally ill person who was, acting out, and decided to take the law into his own hands there too. And I think that this is just a problem for the El Cajon Police Department because now, as you see again, circling the wagons, rallying behind this now officer and trying to act like he's a victim again. And it's really unfortunate. And unfortunately, this seems like to me the state of our affairs when it comes to police departments, even against their own. I represent a number of officers throughout San Diego County in many civil rights cases where black officers, female officers are being discriminated against and really harassed at work either because of their protected class or because they complain about it. And we do have a problem here in San Diego. There's no doubt about that.
Well, the details laid out in the lawsuit against Gonzalez are graphic. Part of the complaint addresses the city of El Cajon's lack of action after the harassment took place. It reads, quote, "When a sergeant texts his female subordinate a graphic photograph of his penis and offers to be her and her wife's effing buddy, that sergeant should be fired. He should be prosecuted. The city did neither." So, Dan Gillian, can you talk about that and how common a response that is to similar harassment claims?
And what the settlement was.
I've never seen this. I've done a lot of sexual harassment cases over the years. I've never seen this. There's only one other occasion where I ever saw an employer send a photograph of himself, and he was not an employer anymore. He was quickly terminated. This is a case where it really violated the penal code. In other words, he violated criminal law. That's why I was saying he should have been prosecuted. You can't send a photograph of yourself to somebody else when they don't want it.
So, Dan Gillian, what was the settlement?
Well, the settlement the first time, that was handled by another attorney, and they entered into a confidential settlement agreement, which I don't believe is enforceable. I believe in First Amendment. But at this point, I don't want to violate an agreement that was entered into by another attorney. I took the case for Officer Greer after she returned to work, and they began going after her again and harassing her again and basically trying to punish her for the lawsuit in the first place.
She was forced to work with him when she returned?
Against her.
She was forced to work with him when she returned?
Right. I mean, even yesterday, she told me that she was there with him. The other day, she had to show up at another location doing work duties. He was sitting across from her, and she believed that he was videotaping her, just the way he was acting. This guy's over the top, and for this police department to be circling the wagons for this cowboy right now is, they've done it before when he did something that should have gotten him terminated. He shouldn't have been a police officer on Tuesday when he shot and killed my client's son, my client's father, my client's brother.
Christopher Rice.
He shouldn't even been a police officer then.
Christopher Rice Wilson of Alliance San Diego, what are you demanding now as the protests continue?
We're demanding that the police department release the video. We want to see the video. We don't want a still screenshot that makes their case. We want to see what happened before and after. We want to see Mr. Longo's actions that made him a threat. Witnesses reported he was holding a vape cigarette before the police department released that information. If witnesses 20 feet away could see it was a vape cigarette, why couldn't the officer see it from 5 feet away?
Well, I also want to bring into
One officer tased, the other officer fired a weapon. We want the video.
Well, I also